Hey everyone, it's Callum from Cagefront here. Welcome back to the channel. And if you are new here, welcome to the channel. We are on our third middleweight headliner in a row. We have started off with Israel Adesanya versus Nasruddin Imavov over in the Middle East. Then we have gone to UFC 312 where we had Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland. And now we have got UFC Fight Night Jared Cannonier versus Gregory Robocop Rodrigues, which this obviously competing with those headliners, it's not the overall greatest, but I mean, it's going to be a big tell. There's a lot of stakes because we got Jared Cannonier. He's 40 years old. Can he stay in that top 10? Or can Gregory Rodrigues seize that opportunity to go from completely unranked almost to top 5 ranked with one fight? So it is a massive fight for the both of them. And when we look at the card, it actually is pretty low-key stacked. We do have some very nice fights on the card. We've got Cavalcanti versus Youssef Zalal. Another opportunity for Youssef Zalal when it comes to being similar to Gregory Rodrigues, going outside of the rankings and getting into the top 10. And then we've also got down in the card, we've got Khaos Williams versus Gabriel Bonfim, which is just going to be an insane fight. And then we've got KO artists like Edmen Shahbazyan on there as well, and we've got other decent matchups too. So we're going to be predicting every single fight on this card, analyzing every single moment on this card, as well as just analyzing who I think is ultimately going to win, and I'll be giving you my prediction within that, and I'll also be giving the fight card award prediction. So we've got the fight of the night, we have got the upset of the night, we have got the fighter to watch, and we have got the finish of the night. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now we're starting off with Julia Avila versus Jacqueline Cavalcanti. Now, I'm pretty confident in this pick. Honestly, Cavalcanti, she's younger, she's the hungrier fighter, and she's a true actual contender at 135 pounds. She genuinely is a fighter that could look at the top 5. I mean, looking at both of them, they've both got similar outputs and everything, but Cavalcanti, she's so much more active with the kickboxing. She's 9 years younger, which is in the right direction, because Avila, she's 36 years old, which is past her prime. And Cavalcanti is just great at applying consistent pressure, maintaining octagon control. I mean, that's what she did against Nora Cornell. Maintained that octagon control and just smothered her. And then she's also got the strike speed advantage as well. And I believe that she's just going to be able to outrun Avila. She's going to be able to chop her down with the leg kicks and just overwhelm her with the striking, because Avila, she's just very stiff on the feet and she's just not very complete with the striking arsenal in comparison to Cavalcanti. Honestly, I see a decision win here. Avila, she is pretty durable. I mean, she's pretty hardy when it comes to the ground game as well, but depending on Cavalcanti and her volume and how well she can get off in the first round, she could possibly get a late KO TKO finish here. I would not be surprised. But with the durability and the craftiness, I'm going to edge it to Cavalcanti, just pulling away with a 30-27 decision here. Moving up to Don'Tale Mayes versus Valter Walker. Now, Don'Tale Mayes, he is either looking really impressive in his fights or he's just looking borderline terrible in his fights. But overall, I do like him, especially when he gets his striking going. And he's got the striking advantage overall in this matchup. I do really like in his fights when he uses the lead uppercut straight, when he uses that 5-2 combo. He uses it to cover a lot of distance. He's got very good reach. And when he's on his game, he does have pretty good lateral movement. But when we look at the ground game in contrast, I mean, his ground game is not there, and Walker is one of the most offensively sound ground game artists that is in that heavyweight division. And I do believe that Walker will be able to take him down, and he does have a submission arsenal there. We saw what happened against Junior Tafa. But, I mean, Don'Tale Mayes, I think he's just going to be harder to get down than, I mean, Walker probably predicts, especially in comparison to a guy like Junior Tafa, because Don'Tale Mayes is just faster, more athletic on the feet. Mayes does have that good lateral movement and good counter striking as well, which could give Walker a couple problems, but across 15 minutes, I mean, with a 75% takedown average as a heavyweight, I do see Walker being able to get this one to the ground, and if it does get to the ground, then he's going to be able to get this one done. But I believe he's going to choose that position over the submission, because I really just don't think he wants to give Don'Tale Mayes the chance to stay on the feet, because overall Mayes is a bit better on the feet. And Mayes going up against like Shamil Gaziev, when he went up against him, he pretty much got swallowed by like that big, heavier, stronger heavyweight that is at least somewhat wrestle dominant, and Walker is that same kind of style fighter. He's even more so in the wrestling department, which is why I'm even more so confident that he's going to be able to win this if he does, and when he technically will get this to the ground. So I believe that this will honestly be like probably a 29-28 decision for Walker. I see rounds 1 and 2 being Walker's. He just takes Mays down straight away and then just grinds him out through rounds 1 and 2. And then I think Walker gets very tired through that second round, opening into the third, and then Mays starts piling it on him with the volume in the third round, but it'll be too little too late. But Walker, 29-28 decision through the first and second round. Moving up the card to Vince Morales versus Elijah Smith. Now, Vince Morales, he has fought very good competition and definitely deserves praise for that, because in his last UFC stint before coming back, he fought guys like Song Yadong, Ayman Zahabi, Chris Gutierrez, he fought Miles Johns and Jonathan Martinez. So half of those guys have been ranked or are ranked right now. So very impressive to go up against a lot of these guys. And now coming back into the UFC, he did lose to Taylor Lapulus, who is a very good kickboxer, very good reach for that division as well, so very hard to deal with. And a big issue within that fight that really exposed Vince when I was watching it is the defensive holes. He does not like to move his head off the center line or even his whole body off the center line, and he is just there to be hit. I will say, like, on the offensive to that part, he does have a snappy jab, but aside from that, I don't really see a heap from him offensively. He does have the KOs there, 7-1 with KOs, but stringing them together against higher level opposition is easier said than done. And when we look at Elijah Smith on the other side, granted, he doesn't have the comparable experience, but he does have a lot of momentum regardless. And he was able to beat that hype train, Aaron Tao, who fights out of New Zealand, who's trained under Dan Hooker. I beat him on Dana White's Contender Series, and from that we can see that he's very fast on the feet, but is also very composed and has good, fast, just precise counter striking as well. And he's on that longer side too. But being on that longer side with the striking is great, but he also has great hip throws. He's got very good blast doubles because he has a wrestling base too. So he's got a dynamic game. He's got depth to his game, and he is a very exciting prospect that just has a lot of those tools there. Now, Morales, he does have good takedown defense, and I believe that he can stuff attempts from Elijah Smith early, but I believe that Elijah Smith, just with those tools that he does have, I think just the difference between offensive and defensive movements between the two of them, I think Elijah can really tag Morales through the first and second round especially, and just overwhelm him with the striking. And I think if he starts overwhelming him and then shoots for like a level change, shoots for a blast double or something, it lowers Morales' guard even more, and that poor strike defense is just going to get exploited in this matchup. And I believe that Smith is going to be able to take a decision win here, but I believe that it probably will be a 29-28, because when we saw him against Aaron Tao, Elijah did slow down a lot in the third round, and that's where I believe with Vince Morales, how durable, just how much of a veteran the guy is. I think that he does get outworked in the first and second, but then I think that the jab does come alive in the third round. He starts throwing some Hail Marys. I think he starts hurting Elijah Smith in that third round, but again, I think it'll be too little too late. I think it'll be a 29-28 for Elijah, but there is a chance that it could be some form of split decision if that jab from Morales does pay off early. But just with the depth of the game, I'm liking Elijah a bit more here as this prospect with a lot of momentum. Now, moving up the card, we got Khaos Williams versus Gabriel Bonfim. This is just absolutely crazy that this is not on the main card. I don't understand the positioning of this in this card. And originally, when I started analyzing this card, this was placed at the opener as the fight card opener because it had just been placed on the card. And I literally almost had a fucking heart attack. I was like, there's no way. I was literally sitting on the toilet on my phone. I was like, what the hell? well, there's no way they're putting these guys at the start of the fight card. Like, you have to have an amazing fight card to have these guys at the start. But even so, I mean, they're still pretty low as it is now, because this is an incredible fight. This is going to be awesome. I mean, we've got the super offensive BJJ game of Gabriel Bonfim on one side against the super aggressive striking game of Khaos Williams on the other. So this will ultimately come down to whether Khaos is going to able to successfully stay on the feet, because if he does, he'll most likely find the finish here. He's got a 4.5-inch reach advantage. He's improved his technical striking, most importantly, but almost strictly just uses the boxing, which is a bit of an issue, especially against a guy with the Muay Thai / kickboxing base of Bonfim with that jiu-jitsu. But Khaos Williams just has the complete equalizer to technical ability, because his power in his hands is bloody nuclear. He is a beast, 8-0 with KOs. And the only way that we have seen him struggle with the range is against bloody Randy Brown, who was utilizing a very nice double jab and then had right hand behind it, which was really stifling Khaos Williams. But Bonfim doesn't string those combinations together, for one, and also he doesn't have the reach advantage here that Randy Brown did have. Big reach disadvantage here in comparison. And when we also look at his fight against Michel Pereira, who is literally a top 15 fighter, Khaos Williams had that guy in trouble. I mean, he had Michel Pereira in trouble at points. They were both just swinging back and forth. And look, Khaos Williams arguably honestly could have won that fight anyway. So we have only really seen Khaos Williams struggle a little bit in that fight, and that's, I mean, against those two, and that's with him being put on the back foot a bit. And aside from that, really, I mean, the guy has got cardio, he is durable, he has got a lot of power, and honestly, Bonfim on the feet, he is good, but he doesn't have the tools and that physical base threat to really back Khaos Williams up like either of those guys, because he's not towering over him like Randy Brown, and he's not physically as just like a genetic freak as Michel Pereira. Now, when we look at the positives, though, I mean, when we look at Bonfim, he is a submission freak. He's 12-0 with subs. He's looked absolutely incredible in his career up until he fought Nick Dolby, who completely overwhelmed him on the feet. So pressure and stamina are the concerns of his game. I mean, he definitely has the advantage on the ground and could possibly finish the fight if he can get Khaos Williams there early. But with all the cons that Gabriel has against Khaos, who has all these very powerful weapons and the great stamina, the great pressure as well, and the overall strength, just like Ange Lusa did, Bonfim struggled against him in that fight a fair bit. I mean, because it went to a decision as well. They were very back and forth, but Ange Lusa doesn't have the power that Khaos Williams have. So I'm taking the underdog here. I'm taking an underdog pick, Khaos Williams, to get the KO TKO within rounds 1 or 2, because we know Bonfim, he fades, and if he can't deal with that striking effectively and he can't get Khaos Williams to the ground, which Khaos Williams does have pretty underrated takedown defense, I mean, I just see Khaos Williams landing a clean, just with all his power, just throwing a bloody check hook off like a clinch knee from Bonfim, dropping him, and then just splitting him from consciousness with ground and pound. I mean, Khaos Williams, I can understand him being an underdog. I can, because of Gabriel Bonfim, and just in terms of his name, his momentum, I mean, his ability on the ground in comparison to Williams. He's more well-rounded overall, you could say that, but Khaos Williams is almost a 3-1 dog. Yeah, I'm taking that. Moving up to Rafael Estevam versus Jesus Aguilar. When we look at Aguilar, you got to give it to the guy. He did make Dustin Poirier proud at UFC 305 when he jumped the gilly and he slept Stuart Nickel with it. I mean, very impressive against a BJJ black belt out of Australia. But when we look at Nickel fighting Aguilar, yes, Aguilar, you know, bit of momentum there from it, but Bro, Nickel is not Rafael Estevam. Rafael Estevam is my most underrated flyweight for a reason, which I completely explain in my most underrated fighters in each division video, which I'll leave in the description below. And don't get me wrong, Aguilar, he is an underrated fighter, especially on the ground from what we obviously saw, but he hasn't faced a dominant wrestling threat remotely close to Estevam, except for Tatsuro Taira, who then submitted him. And Estevam is riding all the momentum. He's undefeated. He has double the output and has good strike accuracy as well compared to Aguilar. And he statistically outworks Aguilar in literally every single position and has completely outworked Charles Johnson, who went on a 4-fight win streak in 2024 and who is now ranked, and Estevam was the last guy to bloody beat him. So he has definitely got some name value there, and he's got very, very good wrestling, more specifically with his judo style trips and throws and his very, very fast ground transitions. And he's utilized that in almost every single fight that we've seen, and he has outworked pretty much all of his opponents completely on the ground. And the same thing is going to happen here. I mean, just do not be surprised if he does finish him, like, either way, if he finishes him with KO, TKOs, or submissions. But when it comes to the stylistic matchup, all said and done, I mean, the durability of Aguilar is definitely there. The guy's bloody Mexican. And Estevam, I mean, he will want the position over the submission, because Aguilar, at the end of the day, the guy is dangerous. He's very good with submissions off his back. He sleeps Stuart Nickel. So with that being said, process of elimination within that, got to give Estevam a very dominant 30-27 decision here, just out transitioning. I could possibly see a 30-26 in this one if he just gets the wrestling going for 15 bloody whole minutes. Moving up the card to Angela Overkill Hill versus Ketlen Souza. And look, looking at Angela, I want to start off with her. It is honestly incredible how long she has been at the top of the game for. She's 40 years old, and I honestly think when it comes to this fight, she can maintain her ranking in this one once again. Because look, Ketlen Souza, don't get me wrong, she looked absolutely incredible against Yasmin Yaragui at the Sphere card. I mean, absolutely brutal. Dropped her like a sack of shit and then just choked her unconscious. But Yasmin, just her chin had expired, which is very weird for a Mexican. But yeah, she had been taken out a couple times, and yeah, she's not looking like she was. But if there is someone who is borderline impossible to KO, it is obviously Angela Hill, because there's 31 pro fights and she has not had one KO loss. And that is thanks to the durability she has, but not only that, the pacing and the pressure that she does apply when it comes to all her matchups. Now, the longer this fight goes, the more Souza's gas tank is gonna drain. She's not a fantastic 3-round based fighter. She does lose stamina. Angela Hill does not. Does not matter how old she is. She probably won't lose stamina going through 3 rounds when she's fucking 50 and still fighting. And when we look at their competition, not even remotely comparable. Don't even need to touch on that. Now, I would be more keen on Souza if Hill didn't have that amazing ground-based performance against Luana Pinheiro where she submitted her, because it's just shown more depth to Hill's game, and she completely outstruck her on the feet badly. And looking at that, if the same kind of Angela Hill is coming through, granted she lost to Tabitha Ricci, but that was still competitive in her own right, and Tabitha Ricci is obviously a top 15 opposition, so Angela Hill is stepping down a peg when it comes to competition within this anyway. And with the experience, with the Muay Thai that she has, and the ability to cut down the body and ultimately cut down the gas tank with the teeps and the knees that she has, along with the durability that she does have, she's going to be able to get a decision win here. I think that she's going to be able to do a good job of obviously circling out, keeping out of range of Souza. She's got the longer reach here as well, which is fantastic for her. She's just going to mince the body up across the first couple rounds, and then I think she's really going to start showing that striking that she does have, put it in full effect. And I think that she honestly possibly could win a 30-27 here. But when it comes to Souza, she's a fighter that can get frustrated, and I think when she does get frustrated, she does throw those like big meaty overhand looping shots, and if they land, I mean, we see what happened in Yasmin Yaragui, you get folded like a lawn chair. But I think that there's a possibility there with what I'm saying. She could possibly get like a second round win, but I believe that Angela Hill overall, she could take a 30-27 more so confidently within this one. Moving up the card to Conor Matthews versus Jose Delgado. Now, Conor Matthews, he has got to get a win in this one. Otherwise, the guy is going to get cut. I mean, he's on his second Dana White Contender Series chance, and he lost his debut to Dennis Bazooka by KO. So the guy, honestly, I just don't think his UFC caliber. I will say he does have a decent submission game, but that's really about it. I mean, he's got a karate black belt, but that doesn't translate in the cage much at all. And he just doesn't have effective striking and doesn't have the power overall in general. And that just really makes him not UFC level, to be honest. And when we look at Jose Delgado, he has got all the tools to take Matthews out. He's extremely aggressive on the feet, has got power in his hands, he's got good knees, which is literally why he won his contract, and he's a super hungry 26-year-old fighter who's coming through the Contender Series, and he's one of those guys that can make the fight extremely ugly if he needs to, but I don't see that having to be an issue. Like, I would be more so concerned for Delgado if he was coming into the UFC fighting someone that was a bit better when it came to the striking, and especially the counter striking, because he can get reckless through his flurries. But since the power threat isn't there on Matthews' side, I've got to take Delgado by a KO TKO here. I think it's probably honestly going to be in the first round, possibly early second round, depending if it gets to ground and pound and Matthews is able to save himself with his grappling transitions. But yeah, it's going to be first round or second round, ground and pound TKO. Moving up the card to Rodolfo Vieira versus Andre Petroski. Now, I do like the activity and the improvements of Andre Petroski. He's obviously on a 2-fight win streak at the moment, and he was able to outwork Budka and Josh Fremd, but stylistically, this matchup does not favor him. He does not have the tools on the feet to eclipse Rodolfo Vieira, which is literally what you have to have against Rodolfo Vieira, because Vieira is just more adept on the ground, not only than him, than pretty much almost any middleweight. He is a very decorated BJJ champion, and when we look at Petroski, granted, he has only been submitted once against Brian Battle on Tough, and then has since gone 7-2 from then. But Vieira is definitely the toughest grappler he has ever faced, and both of them are identical in size, so I don't see any severe overpowering there, unless, you know, there's a weight miss or something, and you know, he's just a heavier fighter. But I mean, we're not going to be doing an analysis on someone that misses weight, and especially with a track record of not doing so. And when we remove the striking, I mean, it comes to the ground game, because one of them's not going to eclipse the other. It comes down to the technique on the ground, especially because, I mean, physically they're not going to eclipse each other either. And when it comes to that ground game technique, I've got to give it to Rodolfo Vieira. I think he's going to hunt an arm triangle. He's going to be able to get Petroski down. Even Petroski might get Vieira down, because Vieira will probably actually let him, and then he'll out-transition him overall across a couple minutes and then hunt that submission. It could be, honestly, an arm triangle. I think it will be an arm triangle, but it could be anything from round 1 or round 2, I believe, there, when they're still at least a little bit dry. He's just transitionally just so much more adept, and if anyone's going to find the finish here, it's going to be Vieira out of the two of them. Petroski's striking is just not good enough here. If it was, then I could possibly see a decision here, but yeah, Vieira, with him finishing all of his wins, this is another win that he's going to finish. Moving up to Ismael Bonfim, the other Bonfim brother, versus Nazim Sadykhov. Now, this is a very interesting fight because both of these guys have high outputs. They both have got KO power and have the same strike accuracy statistically as well. Now, Ismael Bonfim, aside from the Benoit Saint Denis loss, he has looked pretty great. I mean, he made pretty light work of Vince Pichel, especially with the striking exchanges and the submission attempts. And he took out Terrence McKinney fucking brutally with that flying knee on his debut. And then when we look on the other side, we look at Sadykhov. He comes out of the Sarah Longo gym on a 9-fight win streak, aside from having an absolute war against Vyacheslav Borshev at the end of 2023. And I will say it does suck because he's been out since, but this is simply just down to his opponents pulling out. of the fights. I mean, he hasn't been injured. I mean, it's frustrating for him because we had Duncan who had a staph infection, and then we had Medeiros who just had to pull out. Not exactly sure of the reason, but still it has halted his game a bit, but it did give him time to recover from that war as well at the same time. Now, both of these guys have somewhat of a ground game. Like Sadykhov is more of like a pure wrestling based fighter, and then Bonfim has more of a BJJ base. So both of them, they do have aspects there, but they both just love to strike. And it honestly just comes down to who can simply get off the mark and string their combinations together first. And the thing that I do like about Sadykhov naturally is that he fights out of southpaw, and he uses very good power kicks to the right side of orthodox fighters, and if he can utilize that to slow Ismael down, he can definitely win this fight. Because Ismael, when we've seen him riding through third rounds, he can fade a bit, and when we look at Sadykhov, when it comes to that stamina, he's just got better stamina, to be honest. I mean, if there's anything to take from the war that he had, I mean, he was still double-legging Borshev in the third round after losing basically the first and the third round anyway. So, yeah, he's very impressive when it comes to the stamina there from him. But when it comes to that striking on the other side, Ismael, he does like leg kicks, and he's did a very good job against Pichel with those, and Sadykhov's front leg is very highly susceptible to getting chewed apart because he does have a little bit of a wider base because he does like that penetration step for his double legs. Now, ultimately, when it comes to this as like betting, I mean, it is a bit of a betting nightmare because either of these guys, if they get off the mark well, there could be a KO from either of them. I think this is the hardest fight to predict on the card. And when I look overall, when we look at those two striking against each other, we have to look at those other points that make it up. So when I look at the pacing and the stamina, I really just like that more from Sadykhov. He has a very nice tight striking guard as well, and he's got the blast double legs to get it to the ground if need be. And Bonfim is 4-4 with submissions. He's not like the greatest when it comes to the submission-based game. So I could honestly see Sadykhov taking this by a 29-28 decision here. I think he could possibly lose like the second round and take the first round and the third round. I think Sadykhov just mixes up those tools a bit more when it comes to the first round, especially mixing in the wrestling. Second round, I can see Bonfim really coming out harsh, landing the better shots, like breaking through that guard a bit. But then the third round, obviously after Bonfim's just really had a hard second round, I can see Sadykhov just being the fresher fighter and taking this by a 29-28 decision. Now, both of these guys, as I said, could KO each other. I mean, it is a nightmare of a bet to make. I'd leave this out of your multi, honestly. But yeah, it's going to be an entertaining fight nonetheless. Moving up to Edmen Shahbazyan versus Dylan Budka. So we do have a bit of like a striking versus wrestler matchup. And when we look at the wrestler being Budka, the guy's on struggle street at the moment. He's 0-2 in the UFC so far, and he's been beaten by somewhat decent opposition. But when we look at Shahbazyan on the other side, I mean, the guy's a kill or be killed fighter, but you can't discount the experience that he has through those fights where he has killed or he has been killed. And I mean, Budka on that side, I mean, he just does not match up to Shahbazyan's opponents like your Anthony Fluffy Hernandez's and your Jack Hermansson's. I mean, Edmen has just faced better competition, and Budka doesn't have the offensive threat to take out Shahbazyan in this fight. I honestly strongly believe that, and I'm not riding on him controlling Shahbazyan for 15 minutes. I think this is the break that Shahbazyan needs. I mean, compared to that top level competition that he has been fighting, and with him, with the kickboxing that he does have, and the more so improved takedown defense over time, not the best, definitely could see Budka, I mean, you know, ride him out for a round or two. There is that possibility, but I'm more so keen on Shahbazyan finding that shot. The second round, I believe, just the kickboxing he does have, I mean, he generates a lot of power. I mean, 11 KOs, he is dangerous. But Budka on that side, when it comes to the KO department, he's just not the most confident guy on the feet. And with the kickboxing threat that Edmen does possess, I can see this being a KO TKO finish for him. Ultimately, unless Budka can control him, Edmen Shahbazyan should be getting this one done. Now moving up to our co-main event, we have got Kattar versus Youssef Zalal. Now this, as I said in the intro, this is a huge opportunity for Zalal to leapfrog from unranked all the way to the top 10. Because Kattar, he is 10th ranked at the moment. Zalal can jump 10 whole positions. And this is a guy who definitely deserves to be in this position, but can he seize it? I believe that Youssef Zalal can seize this. I think the best way for Kattar to stop him is to consistently apply forward pressure and use that striking, similar to what he did against Giga Chikadze, but doing it against a guy who is as well-rounded and can level change effectively. It's just not that simple to do. And overall, Kelvin, he is like the better striker, as just a natural boxer, but Zalal has looked different since being cut from the UFC back in 2021, where, mind you, he did lose to guys like Sean Woodson, who's literally ready for the rankings, and bloody Ilia Topuria, who Ilia could not find a way to finish him. That is extremely impressive in terms of survivability, and he even worked Ilia Topuria at some point. Youssef Zalal is a special talent, and he is extremely durable, so I don't have Kattar being able to finish him by a KO TKO, and he's got very good lateral movement as well, which supports him in obviously not being finished. And speaking of not being finished, Kattar is notoriously durable, a bit too durable for his own good, especially when we look at that Max Holloway fight he had. But he's also good with like his defensive based positions on the ground to avoid submissions, like what we saw against Aljo. But on the ground, Zalal transitionally is very good, and offensively, we know he's very good with submissions because he has literally submitted everyone in his second UFC stint, within 2 rounds. I mean, all 3 of them, he has submitted every single one. And when we look at his striking, his kickboxing is good. He's actually got pretty decent timing with his kickboxing, and he's accurate as well. And coming out of Factory X, they use very good lead knees as well, which we saw against Shaw. He absolutely folded him. So Zalal's got the weapons there that Kattar cannot just run through, and forward pressure is basically what I'm saying. And basically, I will say, for Kattar, if Zalal does not level change within 15 minutes, I'm confident that Kattar could take this one on volume, but Zalal is a very high fight IQ fighter with the ability to get it to the ground, to out-transition him, to avoid his powerful strikes like he does with literally everyone, and his ability to make it scrappy in the clinch. I've got Youssef Zalal by a decision here, and he doesn't have stamina issues either. I could honestly see this being a 30-27. Benefit of the doubt though, I mean, Kattar, he is an absolute veteran. He does have good traditional boxing. I could possibly see Zalal through possibly the first round having to ride on that durability a bit more, and Kattar being able to take the first round on volume. But then I see Zalal second and third, clinch-based exchanges, getting it to the ground, out-transitioning him, possibly hunting submissions. I can see him taking those last 2 rounds and getting the 29-28 here to get into the top 10. Now, moving up to our main event, we have got Cannonier versus Gregory Robocop Rodrigues. And when it comes to Robocop, just like Zalal, this is a humongous opportunity for Robocop, which I did not see this fight coming from the matchmakers, but it gives him the opportunity to almost break into the bloody top 5 off of 1 fight. This is another 10 positions, just like Zalal, to break through. But this, getting almost a top 5 position, is absolutely insane. But anyone outside those rankings, it's Robocop that deserves this opportunity, because he is entertaining. He delivers every single time, whether he finishes or gets finished, kill or be killed. He hits at a very high clip. He is also accurate with his striking, and he is a fucking bulldozer for sure. And I mean, he is in his prime age range compared to Cannonier, 8 years of difference in age. And I mean, he's coming off a 3-fight win streak, and he looked great going the distance against Christian Leroy Duncan, with blood flying absolutely everywhere, and showing why he deserves this opportunity. And just like Zalal, we need to obviously factor in, can he seize the opportunity? Well, when we look at Jared, he is old. He's now 40 years old, and he has looked great against literally the best of the best. I mean, he really has held his own. Like what the fuck he did to Marvin Vettori. And then, I mean, we look at him against Imavov recently, and then just recently him against Baralho as well. I mean, he started off well against Imavov, and he gave Baralho a huge gash across his face in that last fight that he did have. But those are all said and good. They're all great, but they also are a detriment at the same time, because they were all wars, and the damage he took in addition to the time passing by, I just don't like the comparison of Jared Cannonier going against a guy like Rodrigues with the physical threats that he does bring. He's bigger, he's hungrier, might not be as technically well-rounded, but he carries more raw power than both Imavov and Baralho, and I just don't know if Cannonier can endure and sustain that for a third time consecutively. And granted, Cannonier, he's got good power, he's got the technical boxing. I mean, he's more technical than Robocop, and Cannonier, realistically, he should be aiming to take Robocop down in this fight. I mean, and immediately just get him to the ground and bust up the scar tissue that he does have, because we know he's got some scar tissue with some of the damage that he has taken in his career. Or at least, you know, just try and carry him deep into the fight, go through the championship rounds and try and gas him out to win a decision. But you know, they're obviously viable options, and Jared Cannonier is very crafty, but I've got to be siding with the up-and-comer. I've got to be siding with Gregory Rodrigues. He's hungry, he's got the drive, he's got the power to get into the rankings. And if Cannonier was any younger, I mean, and didn't go through those wars, I would go with Cannonier, especially on that technical basis. But I've got to take Gregory Rodrigues, taking him out within the first 2 rounds via KO TKO. Robocop, don't get me wrong, he's got the shorter reach, but he's good at making it ugly and short range, which is literally what happened against Duncan. And I see him finding an elbow in the clinch, putting Cannonier on skates for the 3rd time and following him down to the ground. And I think this time he's getting split from consciousness. Now, moving on to our fight card awards, kicking it off with fight of the night, I've got to give it to Ismael Bonfim versus Nazim Sadykhov, because these guys, both of them durable, both of them love to strike. One has a jiu-jitsu based game, one of them has a wrestling based game. We have got full MMA here in this matchup, and it's going to be very neck and neck to see who actually takes this fight. And I mean, if the fights that they have both had, when we look at Ismael taking out Terence McKinney the way he did, and the way that Nazim Sadykhov has literally gone against Vyacheslav Borshev, this has got banger written all over it. Now, upset of the night, if you couldn't already guess, I got to give it to Khaos Williams. I mean, being almost a 3-1 underdog, granted he's going up against an amazing fighter in the Bonfim brother Gabriel with that jiu-jitsu based game, but I think it's just too much of a stretch to make him a 3-1 dog when we have pretty well unknowns for Khaos Williams on the ground when it comes to submission-based threats against him. I mean, he's never been submitted, and also on the feet, the power that he possesses with the stamina at the rate that he throws, I'm pretty keen on seeing him catch him at some point, whether it's the first, whether it's the second, or whether it's the 3rd round, because Williams is dangerous literally from the 1st to the 15th minute, and I think he's getting it done. Now, moving on to the fighter to watch, I'm going to give it to Elijah Smith, the Dana White Contender Series debuter. I just think he is very talented. I mean, very, very good striking, very, very fast, very accurate, good counter striking. He's got the wrestling base. On top of that, good blast doubles, good hip tosses. Like, the guy is very good, and he's got a very decent test against Vince Morales. It's a very close fight for sure, and if he can get through him, especially get through a veteran with that much experience, with that resume, this is going to send Elijah Smith flying. And honestly, I'm keen to see it. If he's able to take out him and also take out a guy like Aaron Tao, who's coming through New Zealand, who is one of their most popular fighters on the regional scene. So yeah, Elijah Smith, I'm very keen to see him in this honestly, just this fight card, this matchup specifically against Morales is going to be very entertaining. Now, finish of the night, got to be giving it to Robocop. I just think, you know, Cannonier, he is great. He has had some absolute wars. He has been a beast, a very good staple. I mean, he's been in middleweight, light heavyweight, heavyweight. He's been a journeyman through the UFC. As you know, much of a con that sounds like, he actually has just had a great career. I mean, he's fought for a title. He's fought in all these different weight classes. He's put it on Marvin Vettori. Thank God. No, he's done a very, very good job through his career. But being 40 years old, going against a guy in his prime age range that is not just another, you know, up and comer. It's Gregory Robocop Rodrigues, who is literally a physical freak. I mean, he is a kill or be killed fighter. He's got the KO power, he's got the speed, he's got the strength. I mean, even when it comes to the stamina as well, we haven't seen him go all the way through those kinds of rounds when it comes to championship rounds. For all we know, and especially with him training for it now, he could have tightened up that possible hole for him, which wasn't even a hole in the first place. So yeah, I see Gregory Rodrigues, honestly, he's just going to be too much for Cannonier in this one. And he's going to get the KO TKO finish here in the first or the second round, I do believe. And he's going to be real close to a top 5 position. I hope you enjoyed today's predictions video, and I'll be posting my best bets later this week. And if you want to see more MMA based content, definitely check out the video on the screen. And please like, comment, subscribe. Always goes a long way for the channel, and I will catch you in the next one.